my name is Jera. I teach people how to garden and grow food. So today I want to show you guys how to plant onions and how to take care of them and how do you know that they are ready for harvest. So kind of like from beginning to end. I personally love to eat onions, so I grow a lot of them and they're so easy. There's just a couple things that you have to keep in mind when you're trying to grow onions. First off, let's talk about cultivar selection. There's lots and lots of different onions to choose from. The main and most important thing that you need to research is the daylight hours that that onion requires. When you're shopping around for onion seeds, sets, bulbs, whatever, they're going to be categorized into short day, long day, or intermediate day onions. And so basically what that means is the amount of daylight hours that that particular variety requires to initiate the bulbing process, and then they'll be ready for harvest. So this all depends on where you're located in the United States and what time of year you're growing your onions. So for example, I'm in Florida and we grow our onions fall, winter, and in through spring. The best time to get them in the ground is November, so that they have a nice long time of mild, moderate temperatures and climate to grow and bulb up. I am usually harvesting my onions in June, so it takes quite a long time, just so you know. They need an extra long growing season, but we don't grow them in the summer here in Florida. They're not a summer crop. They don't like the rain, the heat like that, humidity, or whatever. So we grow them fall, winter, and spring. During that time of the year, we have less daylight hours. It's winter time. So we need to grow and select the cultivars that are called short day onions. So they require a less amount of daylight hours to trigger the bulbing process. If you are in the North United States, you're gonna need the long day varieties, and some of you kind of in the middle, you can get the intermediate day varieties. And if you don't know what kind of onions you need to buy for your garden, you can Google it. Just Google like onion day length map, and you can find a map of the United States where it divides the north, the middle, and the south. That way you know which category of onions you should be buying. Now, you got to decide how you're going to get your onions. Are you going to get transplants, little bulbs, or are you going to start them from seed? I have tried to start them from seed and it's not very successful for me. I don't know why. I'm just being honest here. But other gardeners have great success starting them from seed. So I always get mine as a bundle of little transplants, and I have great success with that, whereas other gardeners don't. So try everything and just see what works in your garden. Over the past few years, I have ordered my onion transplants or starts from a company called Dale Farms, and I will link them below in the description. And they're pretty inexpensive. I think this whole bundle, which has 50 to 75 little individual transplants, is around $15 with shipping, so it's not expensive, and this is a lot of onions. This particular one right here is called Texas Legend, but I've also purchased their short day onion sampler pack that has red, yellow, and white onions. I like them all, so I've frequently used that one. So this year though, I wanted just to try the Texas Legend to see how they go in my garden here. My second garden in St. Cloud, Florida, I planted that one with the short day sampler set. If you're going to start them from seed, in general, you're going to start them 10 weeks before your last frost date, just to give you an idea. And then you're going to go ahead and transplant them into your garden. However, here in Florida, that's a little bit different. You want to get your onions about this size transplanted into the ground in November. So you're going to start your seeds 10 weeks before whatever date in November that you want to plant your little transplants. They also sell onions like in these little miniature bulbs, kind of the same thing as a transplant, but they've grown longer and they've formed a mini bulb, and those are called sets. And that's totally fine too if you want to try growing them from those little bulbs. So every year I will go to Dale Farms in October when they release out their fresh inventory for the next year, and I will immediately order whatever onions I want to grow and have them shipped to me the earliest date possible. Otherwise they'll ship them to you like in January or something like that. So please make sure that you're selecting the date you want it to arrive. Pick the earliest date possible, because For us here in the south, like zones 8 and up, it's really important to get them in November, the latest December. But after that, you're kind of missing the mark, because these onions do require a long growing season to bulb up and get nice and big. The goal with me is to harvest everything in June, like no later than June, because that's when we start getting like our monsoon summer rains every single day, and a lot of excess water will cause the bulbs to rot out. So you definitely want to make sure that you're harvesting everything before summer comes and all of the rain. Now these onion little plants, they don't really go through transplant shock at all. You can pull them apart, break their root systems. I mean, obviously be as gentle as you can, but they're very hardy. Like, they just break apart, no issue. Plant them in and they will start growing new green growth in about 2 weeks. So I've decided to plant a row of these on the very edge of my garden beds here. They don't take up a lot of space, so I like to put them like on the edges of beds, or you can just separate them all and plant random onion plants all over your garden in between your other crops, because they are part of the allium family, and a lot of pests don't like the smell of them. Like, they're actually deterred by the smell of allium. So it's actually like a great idea for just an organic, natural way of deterring pests. But I'm just gonna make a big row here and I'll show you how to plant them. Now I have some mulch here already. These are actually wood chips that I put down a couple months ago. And you obviously want to make sure it's weed free, so remove any of that. And I'm just going to pull back the wood chips a little bit. We'll definitely be putting them back around the bulbs of the onions once I'm done planting them. The most important thing about planting your onions is they need loose soil so that bulb can expand and not hit things or be constricted. So this is nice and loose, composted down soil here. The other thing is, if you want big onions, the plant has to be pretty big. The bigger the plant, the more like energy it's able to harness to produce a big bulb. So initially, fertilizing them is really, really important. You want quick, rapid, lots of nice, healthy green growth, so this plant can get as big as possible before the bulbing process is triggered. So I'm going to just sprinkle in some organic granular fertilizer. I'm using Espoma Tomato Tone. I know it's not tomatoes, but I have bags and bags of this stuff all the time, and it's totally fine to use it on other crops. But I'm also going to be sprinkling in quite an amount of blood meal, which is like pure nitrogen, and it's also organic. And that will help these newly transplanted little plants to just rapidly grow and get healthy green lush growth. I mean, that's the plan anyways, so that by next spring these plants should be nice and big, and then they'll start going into their bulbing process. So I'm going to sprinkle in my fertilizer here and just scratch it into the surface. And like I said, it's really important that they get a lot of rapid initial growth, but later on in the growing season, before they start bulbing up, you're going to want to stop fertilizing so much. I mean, it would still be good to use fertilizers that are high in potassium or phosphorus, but you're going to want to take away a little bit from all the nitrogen, because if they have a lot of nitrogen, it's just going to promote a lot of leafy green growth and not focus on the actual bulb. So later on in the season, you're going to want to reduce the amount of nitrogen that you're using on these plants. The other really important thing is you're going to want to space these like 5 inches apart, and that is to allow space for their bulbs to expand out and not be hitting each other. And I just eyeball this, guys. I'm not going to measure it out. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get them planted in there. I have to say that when I started growing my own onions, I was so impressed by the flavor. They are really strong. So if you like onion flavor, get ready for the most intense, strongest onion flavor you've ever had. I kind of just use the distance between my thumb and my index finger to kind of measure out the spacing between each onion. So I was left with a lot of extras here. I like to start planting the bigger, more healthier looking ones first, and then usually I'm left with these like smaller little ones at the end. But these are still really good. Obviously they're going to still grow into an onion, so don't throw them away. Like I said earlier, the smell of alliums deters pests. So it's a really great idea to take those extra ones that you have and just pop them in places randomly throughout your garden, especially for the crops that are really susceptible to a lot of pests, like my tomatoes. And you can still grow these little tiny ones just for the onion greens, so you can start harvesting earlier rather than later. After planting the onions, you're going to want to water them in very well and keep them moist for the next couple weeks just to encourage a new leafy green growth. And make sure you pick a spot that gets full sun. They need a lot of sunlight to generate the energy it needs to bulb and grow large onion bulbs. So now that we've transplanted our onion starts, how do you take care of them? They're super easy. For one, like I have mentioned, pests don't really like them. So I have not seen pests on my onions in my garden as of yet. And I've been growing onions for quite a few years now. And as far as diseases, same thing. I feel if you're growing them during the right time of the year, which in the South is fall, winter, and spring, there's not too many diseases going on. Usually the majority of our diseases are during the summertime. So as long as you get them planted in the ground sooner rather than later, you should be fine and not really have to take too much care with them. One year I was late planting them and I literally put them in the ground at the end of January, and that was too late. They were still not big enough. I left them in my garden in the hopes that they would grow a little bit bigger, but then June came around and we started getting a lot of rain, and I did notice that they started kind of rotting out, starting with the outer layers of their bulbs, so I had to just pull them out and harvest them anyways. So if you're late planting your onions, you could come across that type of issue. If you've learned something new, make sure you subscribe to my channel. That way you get updates whenever I post new videos. I'm trying really hard to push out growing guides for particular crops, just trying to teach you all how to be successful growing food in your own gardens. And check out my website, jarasgarden.com, for seeds and plants that I grow in my own garden and mention in these videos. And I have one last tip for you all, and that is regarding fertilizing. So as I showed, I mixed in some organic granular fertilizer in the soil before we planted our little onion transplants. And that granular fertilizer is going to break down slowly, and it's going to slowly release the nutrients over a longer period of time to our onions. But once these transplants have been in the ground for 2 weeks, you're going to notice some new leafy green growth. And at that time, we're going to start fertilizing with a liquid fertilizer. That's just my preference. The liquid form is taken up by the plants way faster than the granular stuff. I personally really like to use Grow Big. It's a liquid fertilizer by Fox Farms. And so I'm going to start feeding them about every 2 to 3 weeks, all the way up until around April, when I start to notice that the little plants start bulbing up. You'll just notice that they start bulging out. They're not so straight and uniform anymore. We're going to back off on the nitrogen, and we're going to switch to fertilizers that are higher in potassium or phosphorus, because that triggers the plants to kind of focus their energy on growing bigger bulbs.